Good morning, everyone. Hello. Hello and good morning. Welcome. If you can please kind of wrap up whatever you're in the middle of and go ahead and have a seat. We're going to start in just a moment. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Melanie Clunan-Schulte, Worship Associate. Often we give our pronouns from the pulpit, and we do this to acknowledge that pronouns don't always go with appearance, and also that to be truly welcoming to gender diversity, giving pronouns must be normalized. Mine are she, her. The month of October has been filled with important observances. It's LGBTQ History Month. October 11th was National Coming Out Day. October 14th was Indigenous Peoples Day. And our UU theme of the month is Deep Listening. Today, we'll acknowledge all of these with a service that celebrates listening to Indigenous voices, Two-Spirit and LGBTQIA allyship. And this starts with our welcome. We begin each service with a welcome to each other, and we speak about radical welcoming in our vision statements. Welcoming people who have been marginalized in the past means we don't simply say, we won't kick you out or we'll tolerate you, but we don't view you as shameful or less than. And we hope that this supportive environment will help undo any cultural messages that you should see yourself this way. I want to welcome everyone here in the sanctuary today, those who have been coming for decades, and those who may be here for the first time today. I also want to welcome the dozens who join us online, and let's wave to them now. If you wave at that camera, they'll be able to see us. If you are new to us and have some questions, there will be a welcome circle after the service where you can meet some members, grab some refreshments, and join us in the circle near the windows in the back. And as always, a lay pastoral care associate is available for deep listening after the service and throughout the week. In the sanctuary today, that is Joanne Smith. Joanne's waving in the back there. And online, that is Melissa Bush. We have a special guest in the pulpit today. Sheila Lopez will share her story with us today that's both very personal, including how she made her way to VUU, but is also representative of voices we don't always hear from. Part of her story will be the organization PFLAG, a group that I have great respect for. Many of you know that I'm a primary care physician with a substantial transgender population. When I first began seeing transgender patients, about 18 years ago now, many, if not most, had been disowned by their families or were struggling to come out to their families. I frequently gave out P-Flag cards on the rare occasion when a significant other or a family member would be in the room with the patient. But today, I'm happy to say that most of my young adult transgender patients come in accompanied by parents who are very supportive, ask a ton of questions, and frequently are already aware of a lot of the supportive organizations that exist. In spite of the setbacks, bad laws, and very real danger still faced by this population, this does represent a very real and a very positive change in less than 2 decades, and it gives me hope for continued progress. And now I'd like to call Sheila up to introduce herself and to give a land acknowledgement.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Lopez, and my pronouns are she, her, astan, and ella. The pronoun astan is to recognize my mother's Diné or Navajo language, and ella is to recognize my father's language, which is Spanish. I was taught when I speak with groups like this, I am to say a proper Navajo introduction, which I will do now. Yaat ella bene, kia ani nishle, do na kai bashishin, I just said good morning, and I shared with you my mother's clan, which is Towering House, Kia'ani, and her father's clan, which is Totsoni, and that's Big Water. I also say my father's clan, which is Mexican American, and his father's clan, which is also Mexican American. And I end all of it by saying, this makes me who I am as a Diné, a Navajo woman. I would also like to acknowledge my Mexican roots by saying, hola, buenos dias, me llamo Sheila Lopez. I was asked to give the land acknowledgement, and I want to recognize Matthew Yatsetti, who is also a member of VUU. He shared with me what he has done in the past, and he wanted me to also tell you that he misses you all and hopes to see you soon. He's busy working on the election. So thank you, Matthew, for helping me with this land acknowledgement. Today, I acknowledge that the state of Arizona is situated upon the homelands of many tribes. There are a total of 574 federally recognized tribes across the United States, and 22 of those nations are here in Arizona. Phoenix resides on the ancestral homelands of the Hohokam. The land we worship on is now the homelands of the Acamil O'Atham and Peeposh, or otherwise known as the Gila River and Salt River Pima Maricopa people. The ancestors of indigenous communities throughout Arizona helped build the foundation of our beautiful state. From the canals, irrigation systems, and trails and roads, the lives of those who have been here and are still here have played and still influence a large part of daily life in Arizona. Unfortunately, there is a deep-rooted history of colonization and genocide that has had a detrimental effect on indigenous people, our land, and their languages. Many people who live in the Southwest are unaware of this history. Arizona consists of almost 500,000 indigenous voices, thoughts, and ideals. These indigenous peoples continue to thrive, educate, and advocate for the strengthening of indigenous ways of life. We challenge you to educate yourself about the history and the communities who continue to thrive today. It is vital to honor and to respect that you are always on indigenous land.
Well, let's light our chalice together. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice. Creator of the many and the one, we are all here, we and our siblings, And we ask your blessing on us all, especially the ones we have tried to dominate, the ones whose land we have taken, the Wabanaki, the Cherokee, the Shoshone. We have tried to eliminate them, the Pawnee, the Assiniboine, the Salish, but they are here. We are here together in the land. Our siblings have not rebelled against us, but they are with us in peace. The Tlingit, the Inupiat, the Hopi, they have stewarded the land for ages. The Maya, the Tacona, the Maasai, and they are here teaching us. They have honored their wisdom and passed it on for generations. The Cree, the Lakota, the Seminole, and we would learn from them. Bless our siblings of the earth, the Wiradjuri, the Maori, the Sami, and move us toward humility and reconciliation, to learn, to make reparations, to work together. Move us toward mutual respect and restore among us the harmony of siblings in one beautiful home. God of the one and the many, bless our manyness and make us one.
And at this time, would you please stand in body or spirit as you're willing or able while we sing our opening hymn. The lyrics are going to be, or words will be right up here for you, and we're going to sing There Is a Love.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
Good morning. I'm Jules. I am the second, third grade faith formation teacher. My pronouns are she, her. Oh, good. It came up. Yay. I'd like at this time to call up any kids that like to come forward or young at heart that would like to come forward as we do our time for all ages. So has anyone here ever had a disagreement with someone? All the time? I feel you, man, I feel you. Me too. In fact, it's impossible to always agree with everything everyone else thinks. But there are some ways of disagreeing that cause us to feel angry and hurt. And there are other ways of disagreeing that help us to understand each other and even feel closer together. Our theme this month is deep listening, and as you might have guessed, today our kids and youth are exploring that through the lens of listening to those that we disagree with. So with that in mind, I have a story that I want to share with you. This is the 18th camel. It's a wisdom tale. Long ago, there was a successful merchant that owned 17 camels. When he passed away and his will was read, his 3 sons discovered he had given them the camels as an inheritance, and they were very happy because the camels were quite valuable. However, when the sons found out how their father had divided them up, they immediately began to disagree. The will stated that the eldest son would get half of the 17 camels. Oh, I apologize. There was supposed to be a very jaunty little animation there where you see the camel being very unhappy about being split in half. The will stated that the eldest would get half of the 17 camels, but half of 17 is 8 and a half. And camels, they don't really like being split in half. The will also stated that the middle son would be given 1/3 of the camels, which would be 5 2/3 of a camel. So now we have 2 partial camels. And it turns out that camels don't like being split into thirds any more than they do being split in half. Lastly, the will stated that the youngest son would be given 1/9 of the camels, which would be 1 4/5 of a camel. What on earth is 4/5 of a camel good for? The camel didn't know, but he certainly didn't like that idea any better. The sons were furious and couldn't decide what to do, so the 3 sons decided to go to the village's wisest man. The old wise man listened thoughtfully about the difficult matter of dividing the 17 camels according to the father's will, and then walked away. He returned with a camel of his own and added it to the sons' 17. That increased the total of the camels to 18. The brothers began to disagree again. That's not fair. That's cheating. That's not what the will said, and they all yelled. The wise man simply continued. Half of 18 is 9, he said, and so he gave the eldest son 9 camels. 1/3 of 18 is 6, he said, and so he gave the middle son 6 camels. 1/9 of 18 is 2, he said, and so he gave the youngest son 2 camels. The wise man then turned to the brothers and said, "Don't you see? Your 9 plus your 6 plus your 2 is 17. This one," and he pointed to the camel that he had added, "is extra. But don't worry, I'll take it away." The 18th camel is a reminder of what we should do when we are having a disagreement with someone or struggling to hear an opinion or solution that is different from our own. You see, the 18th camel is what we call common ground. Once a person is able to find the 18th camel, or the common ground, 2 things can happen. Either the issue can be resolved, or you, at the very least, have a better understanding of where and why the other person thinks the way that they do. Now, this can be very difficult at times, But listening is the first step, and finding the common ground is a first step too. Listening, even when you disagree, is about trusting that a solution or common ground can be found. If we think that there is no solution or no common ground, then neither will be found. So that is your challenge in the week and days ahead. May all of us, kids and adults alike, do our best to listen for and try to find common ground and bring the practice of deep listening into our living and our loving. And kids, we especially hold on to this lesson as we head off to our religious education spaces, and we're going to explore it a little bit more.
All right, so I know the kids remember our new ritual, hopefully, I'm going to say, where we are no longer doing the Bridge of Love. We're going to sing This Little Light of Mine, and each of the kids is going to carry this little light all the way out, where they're going to use it for their new welcoming ritual on the other side. And say, it'll be really fun, and I hope everyone enjoys it. So kids, come up and grab your candles.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Spirit of life, we know there are many perspectives and experiences of living here in this room as there are people. Spirit of love, please guide us gently into appreciating and listening. Assist us to honor each other in conversation and deeply hearing so we can see the gift of a collective. Show us how we can find understanding by learning to speak one another's languages, so that we may go deeper into our beliefs and connection through a personal, communal, and perpetual evolution. Breath of life, give us the patience to live into this faith of community, the curiosity to ask loving questions of each other, and allow us to be always expanding our spiritual awareness of the worlds within and without. Inspiration that is life, we offer our gratitude for the comings and goings, beginnings and endings, through which we have each been granted the opportunity to reflect with openness both upon that is within our individual experience and that which is within another's. Blessed be. If you would like to commemorate a joy or sorrow, please feel free to light a candle or move a stone or add water to the fountain. Hello again. I'm pretty new to VUU, so I would like to start by sharing a little more about my background and some of the challenges I faced growing up before I share my PFLAG story. My mother is Louise Lopez, and she is a member of the Navajo Nation. She was born in Greasewood, Arizona, and my father is Philip Lopez, and he is second-generation Mexican-American from Winslow, Arizona. And they're here in the audience today. Thank you for coming, Mom and Dad. And my little brother, Philip, is in front of them there too, so thank you, brother, for being here. My dad was a park ranger, and my mom, let me go back. My parents met at the Petrified Forest National Park in northeastern Arizona. My dad was a park ranger, and my mom was a waitress at the park's restaurant. They fell in love and married, and soon after I was born. I was born on August 27th, 1973, in my dad's hometown of Winslow. It's a really small town, about 2.5 hours northeast of here. You might have heard of the town from the famous song by the Eagles, Take It Easy. Well, that song put our town on the map. We lived in many parts of that small town, but I will never forget living in Southside. Southside was one of two neighborhoods south of the railroad tracks, and the Santa Fe Railroad runs right through the town. Coopertown was the other neighborhood, and all I remember was only black and brown families lived south of the tracks. Southside is where my Mexican grandma lived. I have fond memories of riding my bike in the neighborhood, trying to keep up with my brother and his friends. I could never do it. I also remember watering my grandma's trees in front of her house. The smell of her cooking, I so miss that. And I also remember playing in the llano. The llano is the desert behind the neighborhood. And I was told, be careful of the Llorona. Don't go out at night because the Llorona will get you. It's a Mexican folklore that was used to prevent children from being out late. Winslow is also a border town to the Navajo Nation. And unfortunately, Native people from reservations experience violence, discrimination, and racism in border towns, just like Winslow. There is a history of discrimination against brown and black people in Winslow. I have heard stories and even witnessed some. When I was in high school, I don't remember the teachers really encouraging me to go to college, and the teachers were mostly white. But I will never forget two women that helped me on my journey. The first was Sister Michael Claire Wilson. She was a retired Catholic nun that managed a federally funded higher education assistance program for American Indian students at the high school. Sister Michaels would make sure that we were going to class, and she took students that made the honor roll on these amazing field trips. And she would regularly correct how we spoke English. You see, myself and many of my classmates were taught English by parents that were ESL speakers. The other person that made a profound impact on my life was a new guidance counselor that came to our high school my senior year. Her name was Miss Fletcher. This woman would help me put my life on a whole other trajectory. You see, I was pregnant my senior year, and I hadn't thought about college or what I was going to do afterwards. And that is when Miss Fletcher invited me into her office, and she asked me, what are you going to do after high school, and how are you going to care for your baby? I couldn't answer her, and she told me that my grades were pretty good and that I should apply to college. It was the last week to apply for financial aid, and she helped me with the entire process. I was admitted to NAU and ASU, and I ended up going to NAU to be close to home. I mention these two women because they were white women. And the way that I was raised, the racism that I saw, I was hesitant about these two women. And I am so grateful that I could look past the color of their skin to let them help me. Well, I ended up going to NAU to be close to home. I wanted to be close to my folks and to my grandma. I attended NAU and I studied electrical engineering while raising two kids. I didn't do it alone because I had help from their father and my parents, especially my mom. I could have never finished without their support and encouragement. It took me a while to graduate, but I finally did in May of 1998. That was a long time ago. Thank you. When I graduated from NAU, my daughter, Samantha, was going into second grade, and my son, Emmanuel, was going into kindergarten. We moved to Roseville, California, where I started a job at Hewlett-Packard, or HP. I didn't want to leave Arizona because I wanted my children to experience our Navajo and Mexican culture and our ceremonies. I was reluctant to leave, but I had to. It was hard living in Roseville and working for a company that did not have a whole lot of diversity. We experienced ignorance and occasional racism, and working at HP was the first time I had heard the word token from a coworker that reminded me I was a DEI hire, which is not true. I worked hard to receive my electrical engineering degree, and I went through the same interviews as that person to get the job that I had. And I also met a woman at the apartment complex at the gym that asked me, I told her where I worked, and she asked me, do you work in the kitchen at HP? I will never forget that. Sadly, the woman was Latina, and I'm sure she meant no harm, but I will never forget that. People weren't used to seeing people like me in the corporate world. It was tough, but I wanted to make a good life for my children. As the years passed, I always wanted to come home, back to Arizona. And in 2005, I received a job offer from Intel, and we came home. At that time, my daughter was a freshman in high school, and my son was in middle school. And I also had another son, Matthew, or Mateo, and he was just 2 years old. It was a bit challenging for my family to move back home, but I was happy to be in Phoenix because there is a mix of people here. We are closer to the Navajo Nation, and there's a large Native population here. So in the winter of 2009, I found out my daughter, Samantha, who was a junior in high school, was dating a girl. And that's when my life was put on another trajectory. My son, Emmanuel, was also in high school. He was a freshman. And I was married at the time, and my husband wanted to go skiing, so we took our kids to Flagstaff. And my daughter invited one of her friends, who was a girl. And I noticed this girl was being really touchy-feely with my daughter, and that made me wonder, what is going on? So early 2009, I'm embarrassed to say, I invaded her privacy, and I looked at her text messages on her phone. I'll never forget the day I confronted her as if she did something wrong. I'll never forget that day because sadly, I hadn't educated myself on this subject. I remember I came from that small town, and in that small town, I was taught two things about being gay or trans. It was bad, and you made fun of it. The day that I spoke with my daughter, it ended with both of us in tears, and I'm sure I was raising my voice at her. I blamed the girl. I told my daughter, "How do you know you're gay? You haven't been with a boy." I will never forget what she told me. She said, "Mom, I wasn't going to tell you until I went to college because I didn't want to be a disappointment." That still pains me to this day, because my daughter is amazing, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with her. And it saddens me to know that the way I had raised her didn't allow her to be proud of who she was, all aspects of who she was. That same day, I asked my oldest son, Emmanuel, if he was gay too, so we could just get it out of the way. I always thought something was different about him, and I actually thought he would grow out of it. I was ignorant on this subject, and after he found his sister crying, he came to me and told me, "Mom, how dare you drag us out of the closet? You let people come out on their own terms and at their own time." I'll never forget the weeks following. We got some really bad advice from people. We were Catholic at the time, and we went to the priest for guidance. And he told us, "Call Child Protective Services on our children if they wouldn't listen to our rules." I was stunned. He didn't tell us, "Love your children. Learn about this." He didn't tell us that. I had a coworker tell me that her church saw LGBTQ people as pedophiles and that they could change. I'm embarrassed and ashamed that I repeated that to my children. We would ask dumb questions, and our children educated us. I'm grateful that they didn't run away because of our reaction. And it turns out they had been both going to an LGBT support youth group called 1 in 10. So they were ready to talk to us. Please change the slide, thank you. My folks helped us on this journey. My mom, she recorded a PBS special called Anyone and Everyone, which is a documentary about parents sharing their stories of their children coming out and the fears that they had about that. And I remember just crying watching that and relating to the parents and the fear that they had because it was real. But what struck me the most was this young person who didn't have a mother or father there in that video because the mother had disowned him. And my dad, he found a book titled Always My Child. And I remember reading that book and learning more about sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. And I would ask my children more questions, and again, they were patient with me. My oldest son, Emmanuel, encouraged me to go to PFLAG. Please change the slide. PFLAG is the first and largest nonprofit dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ people and their families. PFLAG originally stood for Parents and Families Friends of Lesbians and Gays, but now they only go by PFLAG because they're open to all. And it was co-founded by a woman named Jean Manford in 1973, the year I was born. She was a mom that had marched with her son, who was gay, in the 1972 New York Pride March, and she held up a sign that said, "Parents of gays, unite in support of our children." There are now over 400 chapters across the country. So I listened to my son, and I looked up PFLAG online and found out that PFLAG Phoenix, the Phoenix chapter, was going to march in the Phoenix Pride Parade, which I'm actually missing today. We hadn't even gone to a PFLAG meeting, but I learned that they were going to march, and we marched with that group April 18th of 2009. And this was just a few months after we found out our two oldest were gay. I had to stand up for my children. I wanted to share my story so others could learn how to embrace their children, how to understand their children. Well, when we finally attended PFLAG support group meetings and started to learn more, I became an ally. I didn't see Native people like me in the meetings, and I knew there was a need for supporting the Indigenous community. So I started a chapter focused on helping Indigenous people and their families. Our chapter was called Native PFLAG, which was the first of its kind. I'm grateful for PFLAG as it helped me continue my education. Later, I would learn more about Navajo teachings by watching a documentary called Two Spirits. It's a sad documentary about a Navajo person named Fred Martinez, who was murdered in Cortez, Colorado. This young person was born biologically male, but would present as female. They were a victim of a hate crime. The documentary showed interviews of LGBT Two-Spirit people from different tribes. And I heard from a man named Dr. Wesley Thomas, who was gay and Navajo, and he shared what it meant in our culture. And it meant that it was an extra special blessing. And I can attest to that. Next slide. I also learned that we recognize 4 genders, and we have 4 words for each of these. This isn't something new. These are not new Navajo words. And so on the slide there, on your far left is Asan. And when I introduce myself, I say that I am Asan. That is a feminine woman. And then to the right of the slide is Hastin. That is a masculine man. And then you have the 2 genders in the middle, Delbat, which is a masculine female, and Naglehe, which is a feminine man. I would not label my children, but I could see those middle genders in my daughter and my son. I also learned Two-Spirit people are medicine people. They have special roles in our ceremonies. They're healers. They're peacemakers. So why hadn't I learned this before? Well, colonization happened. My mom attended the boarding schools where she was forbidden to speak Navajo, punished if she did. And then the churches came to save Native people. That's what happened. I wanted to raise awareness, so Native PFLAG's focus was to bring back the traditional teachings, those positive teachings. And we supported the valley and surrounding tribes until 2020, when I had to close the chapter due to a lack of new leadership. Next slide. However, before closing the chapter, we started Arizona's first ever Two-Spirit powwow. It was first held in 2019 and then in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. A powwow is a gathering where healing happens. There are traditional songs, there's dances, there's competitions with dancing. There are people selling native jewelry, selling food, and this is where the community comes together to celebrate. Native PFLAG handed over the powwow to the Phoenix Indian Center, which is the largest and oldest Indian center in the country. They're an amazing nonprofit here in the Valley, doing amazing work. They now host the annual event, and they're doing an amazing job with it. And I am still a PFLAG member. I was recently asked to sit on their new National Indigenous Parents and Families Advisory Council, which I am amazed. Since joining PFLAG in 2009, I have seen a huge shift in the Native communities supporting Two-Spirit LGBT individuals. The decolonization has begun. Now that brings me to how I came to VUU. I had raised my children in the Catholic Church, and after hearing that priest's bad advice, I wanted to learn more about the church's teachings on LGBT people, and it was not good. So I left that church, and I told myself I would never support a church like that again. And I've been on a healing journey for some time now. And I wanted to find a spiritual community. And I knew from attending all those Pride events that there are open and affirming churches. So I did a Google search, and I found VUU. I first attended services online because I was nervous to come in person. I'll never forget one of the first services I attended. Reverend Sarah spoke of white privilege. And people shared their pronouns. We helped immigrants. And occasionally a land acknowledgement is given. I was blown away. So inclusive, so aware, and so caring. So I was like, I found my people. And I became a member on April Fool's Day. So when you see my tag, it says April 1st, 2023. But it was challenging to come into this room because I didn't see people like myself. And I usually sat way in the back and would take off as soon as services were done. But I saw a friendly face, Beverly there in the front. Beautiful Beverly, always smiling and welcoming. I love it. I also saw two familiar faces, Lee Liswowski. She was in the community band that I was in. And then I saw someone I worked with at Intel, Doug Nitzel. And on occasion, I would go and talk with him in the welcome circle that he helps with. And that is where I recently met Beatriz Arias, an emeritus professor at ASU and a member of VUU. And we are now working with Reverend Sarah and other VUU members to bring more education of Arizona's rich history of Indigenous, Black, and Latinx people to this congregation. So far, I am happy to be a member of VUU. And I think my family and friends are really surprised because I had become adverse to churches, to religion. But we are not a church. We are a congregation. So today, I hope that you have learned some history of where I come from and maybe understand why I have been kind of in the background, maybe a little standoffish even. It's because I'm guarded, but I'm working on it. So I'd like to thank Reverend Sarah for allowing me to share today, and for Melanie for supporting me with the prep for this. But I would especially like to thank my parents, my brother, and especially my children for letting me share our story. I love you, kids, and I thank you for your many, many blessings. I appreciate you all for listening to me today. Thank you. Gracias. Así es.
I'd like to call the ushers forward now for the offering. Your generosity allows us to come together for services like this one and funds our mission. Thank you for your gifts. sacred mountains, calm their spirits as grandfather's son soars like an eagle above the mountaintops to soothe the wounds. Feeling is a circle. Survival is ascending. What warrior has no scars? What warrior has seen no battles? Our two-spirit siblings paid a high price for such a small percentage of us to survive. You there, you are sacred, and I am sacred too. Everyone and every being provides a purpose. No purpose too small, for even our beetle brothers and sisters bring us a message. We too rise like the sun, often eagerly, to make our round about the day, much like grandfather sun and grandmother moon. But us unorthodox creatures, not confined to the European standards of sexual orientation or gender, our sunshine can often be dimmed by the hailstorms of an apathetic society. Be gentle with us in your modern world. It is your ancestors who literally fed our two spirits to the wild dogs. Be gentle with us so that you may begin to understand the medicine we bring.
So I'd like to first apologize to the people online. I'm going to ask for this to be muted. There are people that will take our songs and do things with them, and I don't want that to happen. This is a prayer song that I'm going to sing. You'll hear me sing and then say some words. And this song is titled Shith Njone. And Shith Njone means beauty is with us. And in the song, I say, let there be beauty all around us in the north, south, east, west directions. And then I say, let us walk on the corn pollen path, which is the good road. And then I end by singing a little bit more, and I end with Hajona Hasli, which is, let there be beauty and harmony again. And we say that 4 times, and that is to restore harmony and beauty. So I'm going to sing it for you now, so please mute. that blessing with you today.
I think you're surprised to see me, and I hate to break this wonderful spell. My name is Marilyn McDermott, and I'm a very new member of VUU, and I just realized when Sheila mentioned her name tag, I have the same number, 4123, so we were in the same class. But I'm here just to represent our hospitality group, the coffee and donut and treat people. We really do need help. There are very few of us that set up and take down. It's a great place for new people to get to know. That's why I joined. I got to meet a lot of people. We also need treats every week. One day last week we had nothing when we went out. We had a bunch of graham crackers and that was about it. So there's a sign-up sheet in the back. You get plenty orientation on how this works. And you could offer one day a month or one day every other month or whatever. And I want to put in a plug too for Pat Flayhart and her flowers. She has a real need for flowers. And Nick in the back is really looking for ushers, so I thought I would include them, and I really appreciated your talk today. I grew up with the Lakota in South Dakota, so it meant a lot to me also. Thank you.
All right, great. A lot of opportunities to get involved. Well, let's extinguish our chalice together. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again. Go in peace.